Chapter 23, Section 3, Hoover's Response to Hard Times. President Herbert Hoover strongly believed in self-reliance, rugged individualism, and hard work. His own life reflected these conservative principles. Orphaned at age 9, Hoover became a millionaire and a respected public official through his own talents and determination. Hoover was not oblivious to people's suffering, but like most conservatives, he did not believe that the federal government should give aid to the needy. Federal relief, he worried, would undermine self-reliance and encourage people to become dependent on the government's handouts. Instead, he supported mutual self-help through voluntary giving. A cautious approach, limited government intervention. Like many economists, Hoover viewed the American economy as basically sound. He felt that his job was to generate optimism and restore confidence. Optimistic business owners, he believed, would expand production. Confident consumers would spend more money. The economy would then bounce back without direct government involvement. Meanwhile, Hoover looked to local communities, mainly through churches and private charities, to take care of their citizens. Hoover's conservative approach made sense at first. In time, however, even he could see that this depression was different from past ones. For example, unemployment continued to increase. So did the numbers of Hoovervilles, shanty towns that homeless Americans in many cities built out of crude cardboard and tar paper. While people in cities went hungry, desperate farmers tried to boost crop prices by causing food shortages. However, it was a sharp increase in bank failures that finally caused Hoover to rethink the government's role in an economic crisis. To deal with failing banks, Hoover at first tried his standard approach of voluntary cooperation. He prodded the owners of healthy banks to loan money to banks that were suffering. When this cooperative venture did not work, Hoover reluctantly modified his policy. In 1932, he supported the creation of a government agency to save failing banks and businesses. That agency, called the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, RFC, issued government loans to banks, railroads, and other big businesses. Hoover hoped RFC loans would stimulate economic growth. Once companies began hiring again, he believed, prosperity would trickle down to the economy to those most in need. To his credit, the number of bank failures declined greatly that year. Still, conservatives criticized Hoover for putting the government in business of saving banks. At the same time, liberals criticized what they called his trickle-down theory of helping the needy. The poor, they argued, could not wait for money to seep down to them from expanding businesses. They needed direct relief right away. With the presidential election coming in the fall, Hoover knew he had to do more. In July 1932, he supported a bill authorizing the RFC to loan money to states that no longer had enough resources to help the needy. The bill also allowed the RFC to finance a variety of public works projects. This legislation stopped just short of offering direct federal relief to those in need, but it was a giant step in that direction. Hoover signed the bill into law just as the issue of the bonus army was about to boil over. Hoover battles the bonus army. When the Bonus Army veterans first arrived in Washington, D.C., President Hoover had chosen to ignore them, hoping they would go away. They did not. However, on June 17, 1932, Congress defeated the bill that called for paying the bonuses immediately. At that point, a few thousand weary veterans gave up and headed home. But close to 10,000 Bonus Army marchers refused to leave. Walter Waters vowed to continue his protest until 1945 if necessary. Fearful that the remaining veterans might become violent, Hoover ordered their removal. On July 28, troops used tear gas and tanks to push the veterans out of Washington. The next day, Hoover told reporters, "A challenge to the authority of the United States government has been met, swiftly and firmly." However, reports of tanks chasing unarmed veterans out of the Capitol appalled many Americans. Roosevelt calls for a New Deal, the election of 1932. That summer, Democrats nominated New York Governor Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, to be their presidential candidate. Like his distant cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, FDR had a charming, magnetic personality. As he campaigned across the country, he radiated confidence in his ability to take charge of the economic crisis and lead the country to better times. In accepting the Democratic nomination, Roosevelt promised a New Deal for the American people. While he did not yet make the details clear, FDR pledged, with his New Deal, to do whatever was needed to help the needy and promote recovery. "The country needs bold, persistent experimentation," he said. "It is common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it frankly and try another. But above all, try something." A gloomy Hoover warned Americans that a Roosevelt presidency could bring disaster. Federal meddling in the economy, he claimed, would stifle free enterprise. Despite Hoover's dire warnings, Roosevelt won a landslide victory. He tallied 472 electoral votes to Hoover's 59, with a margin of victory of more than 7 million popular votes.